Hey folks, it's your pal Mike Shea from slyflourish.com and twitter.com/slyflourish. Oh, spoilers. Here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy DM Prep. This is a weekly show on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, in which I go through steps from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master while preparing for my Sunday D&D game. In this case, I am running the hardback adventure, The Ghosts of Saltmarsh. This show is possible thanks to the fine folks at patreon.com/slyflourish, the Patreon backers of Sly Flourish. Thanks to them, I am able to afford the bandwidth and the equipment and all the other things that I need in order to keep the Sly Flourish empire running. They are the fuel that keeps the machine going. And what else? Do I have anybody else to thank? There's all kinds of different people to thank, but I will thank them throughout the show. So last session, if you are in chat, if you are in Twitch chat, feel free to say hello. We will be talking about my game, but we can also talk about anything related to D&D that we want to talk about. I don't really have any other topics, I think, that are of real interest. But maybe a little bit about Eberron. We could talk about Eberron. Daddy Warbucks is here. Hello. Brohannes Brahms is here. Very good. So last session, we had a downtime session. So I was down at least 2 players. I think I was down 2 players, and we ended up having 4, and some folks were running late, so it actually worked out. And the goal was that they had finished the Haunted Mansion in Sinister Secrets of Saltmarsh, and they returned to the town of Saltmarsh, and I sent them an email before the game. I think I did it the morning before the game to say, hey, we're going to have a downtime session. Read up on the chapter in the player's handbook about downtime activities, and we'll talk about other things. But expect that you're going to have essentially a week in Saltmarsh to sort of recuperate, right? After kind of chase down personal threads and do other such things. And that worked out pretty well. This is the second downtime session that I ran. I ran another one for my Wednesday group a few weeks ago. And, oh, cool. I'm on someone's TV. I ran it a couple of weeks ago for my Wednesday group, and it didn't go as smoothly. And I thought that was interesting because with that group, I ran Shadow of the Demon Lord. And I had a downtime scene every session. At the beginning of every session, they had about 10 or 15 minutes where the players could talk about what their characters had done over about a 3-day period. And the difference was they knew that they were going to have those sessions in Shadow of the Demon Lord. They all enjoyed it, but they didn't know they were going to have a downtime session in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. So they didn't really have anything prepared, and they're kind of like looking back and forth, and I didn't really have anything prepared. So that session, it was fine. Like, people didn't hate it, but it was kind of unstructured, and people are kind of running around. I was doing a lot of improv, and I think doing a lot of improv in a downtime session can be tricky. You can do it, and there's improv in all sessions. Good, and I think there's a fair bit of improv in all D&D. But I think that when you're running a downtime session, the kind of prep that one does matters a little bit more. So last week, if you saw the show, we did some prep for downtime. And having warned the players ahead of time, they were prepared for it. And I got a note from one of the players afterwards. I was like, that was really awesome. I really enjoyed that. So I think it went well. I think it was enjoyable. So in that session, the main beats of the session, there were a couple things that happened that were pretty monumental, but the big beat was that they went to the council, they talked to the council, and the council said, we are pretty sure that there's a ship out there that's doing the smuggling. We want you to go find this ship, infiltrate it however you choose, and find the following pieces of information. And those pieces of information were find out who's receiving the smuggled weapons, find out where the weapons are going, learn if they are a threat to Saltmarsh, and then some sub goals are find out where the weapons came from and eliminate the pirate threat. So having those, we'll talk about that in this session, but so that's what they heard from the council, and they were told by their primary council member, who is what's his name? Anders Solmar, the younger kind of rich head of the merchant guild or merchant group, and one of the 5 council members. He's kind of the balance between the traditionalist and the loyalist factions in Saltmarsh. And he's the one that said, why don't we send that group out to keep doing this? And he's going to be kind of their main quest-giving NPC and the speaker for the council, which also has that other interesting side bit. Spoilers, that he is influenced by... what's his name? He's down here. Scarran Wavechaser, who's a member of the Scarlet Brotherhood. So there's some fun faction stuff that can go on there. So that was the main thing, is that they got their quest for the next part of the adventure. But then other things that happened, they met a bunch of people. They met a guy named Old Ivan, who was a witness of the Black Death. The Black Death is the name of the giant whale that is out there. And they learned that the whale might even have tentacles. Maybe it isn't a whale at all. And that he was living in the southern part of Saltmarsh in an old Crabber's Cove. And the Crabbers no longer used it, and now it's become kind of this dilapidated building on the outskirts of town. So they went out to talk to him, and then it turned out he was hanging out with ghouls. So he was like, well, I don't want to eat you, but my friends do. I'm sorry about that. And the ghouls attacked, so they had to fight some ghouls. And then he said, yeah, there's a voice that whispers to me, and he's going to be real mad that you killed the ghouls, and he lives down below. And they're like, what do you mean the below? And he said, there's an old dead tree, and there's a cleft at the bottom of the tree, and it leads into a tunnel that is beneath Saltmarsh. And so they went down there, and they ended up finding this whole place, this giant cell that exists down there. And in the cell, they saw there was a big rift and a bridge that led to the front of this cell. The cell is like this huge worked stone construct with a big trapezoidal door, and the door is broken down. And let's see, I can probably pull up a map and show you guys, because I happen to have a map of this location, because I like to reuse my maps. Maps finals. Nope, that's not right. Map final. The cell. I pull up we'll stick in this window here. This was the map of the location. So they came in the tunnel through one. They came into, and they found this bridge. So they came into this large chamber, and there's this bridge with a big glyph on the center of the bridge that was radiating radiant energy. And ghouls were started to pour out of this rift. Is this all showing up? Am I all good? Ghouls started to pour out of the rift, and they saw on the other side, they're like, they're already worried about ghouls, because they're second level, I think, so like they beat a couple of ghouls, but there's like 10 ghouls coming out of this thing, and they're like, holy cow. And they look on the other side, and out of the door of this big cell, this big structure, hang on, I happen to have some artwork for this place as well. Final art JPEGs, this cell. Where is it? So that's what the front of the thing looked like. And they saw this that's like decrepit looking tiny figure crawling out of the front of it. That was all sort of like, it had a head that was too big and arms that were too long and long fingers, and it was crawling out of it. And it kind of looked up, and one of its eyes gleamed with a red light and nearly charmed one of the characters, who was like, ah, and they're like, we're running the hell out of here. And so they ran out, and they're like, we're getting out of here. And they fled, and they went outside, and then outside, Skylar hit it with a thunder wave and collapsed the entrance. So he's like, there, it's all better. And they went to the counselor and like, man, you got some bad stuff going on underneath Saltmarsh. And they're like, huh, well, we got bad stuff everywhere. There's bad stuff everywhere. And then that night's Bleth had this dream of this creature crawling up into her bed and kind of rising up, and it looked at her with that gleaming eye, and it said, help me. And then she woke up. She's like, ah. So yeah, there's something beneath Saltmarsh. So that all was improvised on the spot. It doesn't look like it's improvised, because look at that great map. That map, by the way, is actually a map for Ruins of the Grendelroot, and for an adventure called The Cell. And I was like, hey, I had that in mind, and I was like, this would be a fun adventure. This would be a fun map to use for this little improvised thing. So keep some maps on hand. Here's a tip for you. Keep a bunch of maps on hand. and you can use them for just about anything. You can just reskin them into fitting whatever you happen to need for your story. Dyson, by the way, if you go to Dyson, if you want a big pile of maps, man, you go to Dyson's maps, and he has 1 million maps. Look at this page. Look at it. Look at this scroll bar. Oh, maps. So many maps. Oh my God. I wonder how many maps are on this page. He's using it. Let's count the number of. I guess that's not a character. I don't know. He's got a lot of maps. So if you ever need just a big pile of maps and you want to look it up, just grab something off here. This is probably too many maps to have on hand all at once. But, going through and finding a bunch of random maps is a really great way to improvise some stuff. So I thought that was interesting that even though we had this downtime session, we still ended up having this tiny little, 45-minute mini adventure where they went down into a dungeon, faced some ghouls, saw a horrible evil, and then fled. And that whole scene is actually kind of in the adventure. If you go to... in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, I guess I go to the front page here. Source Adventures, Ghosts of Saltmarsh. If you go to Saltmarsh overview, and the Crabber's Cove. Yeah, so this whole thing, right? This is spoilers, right? Crabbers from Saltmarsh are cautious about the cove. People are disappearing into the clacking darkness, never to be seen again. Unnoticed, a vampire named Zolek is trapped in a hidden cellar. I call it a cell, so I made it bigger than it is here. But that there's a vampire who's trapped in there, and that he was trapped by a cleric of St. Cuthbert. So the idea is like he has these, there's people that go down there and turn into ghouls, but there's a vampire, full-on vampire named Zolek, and he hasn't eaten in centuries, so he's like all decrepit and tiny and looks terrible, and all he wants to do is feed. So, a little bit of Dracula going on in there, right? You can always have a little bit of Dracula. A vampire underneath the town is always a good idea. So, and the players are smart. Like, I think that my players on both sides are pretty much broken of the idea that they face quote unquote like challenge appropriate activities. Like, I will give you a lot of hints and a lot of opportunities to flee, but that doesn't mean you're not going to run into some really bad stuff every so often, depending on where you go. You might dig too deep, as they did. Like, oh, let's go into the cove. Oh my God, there's a vampire in the cove. I don't know if they know it's a vampire, but they're like, wow, we sure don't like it, whatever it is. So that was really fun. But isn't necessarily directly tied to the main adventure. So what was interesting about these two sessions in particular is that they both are somewhat different kinds of sessions than D&D sessions typically are. A downtime session is not typical. Like, we have our exploration, role-playing, and combat pillars of D&D play, but downtime's covered well in the books. Like, both the Player's Handbook and the DMG and Xanathar's Guide all cover downtime activity. They have a lot of stuff, and it's worth, if you're going to run a downtime session, and don't do what I did and just kind of run it, go and read the books and be like, oh, there's things like magic item, and so one of the characters met the quartermaster of Ayus, and the quartermaster of Ayus is willing to has downtime activities. So there's a whole list of downtime activities in this book. Buying and selling magic items through the quartermaster of Ayus is one of the things that she talks about. The rarity that she'll do it 300 gold pieces. She can look at it. That there's carousing and research and employment and mercenary work. So there's a bunch of different activities, and it's worth the DM kind of articulating these kinds of activities that somebody could take in a downtime session. So I'm writing a whole article about downtime activities and downtime sessions for Sly Flourish, because I think it's an interesting topic. It's a type of game. It's a type of session that I think could be really interesting with a group that has the time. I think some people are like, we just want to go right into the action, and that's fine. If the whole group is not into it, that's cool. But every so often, it's kind of nice to use it as sort of a character development session and a story development session where not everything is swords out and spells being cast all the time. And then the other kind of situation is the situation with the Sea Ghost. So in Sinister Secrets, I'm gonna keep going back. I should, we're gonna keep it up this time, and we're gonna go to Sinister Secrets. in Sinister Secrets. So it's interesting. I have already run Danger at Dunwater for my Wednesday group, so I kind of know how that turns out. And what's interesting is that Sinister Secrets is a really long adventure. A lot happens in this adventure. It's a great big one. I love it. It's a great adventure, but it's a big one, and a lot of things happen. And Dunwater, depending on how it plays out, we're going to talk about this in the next couple of shows, 1 or 2 shows out from now. Danger at Dunwater is a very different kind of adventure, and it might be really quick. It could just be 2 or 3 hour adventure, where this one is like 6 to 8 hours. So, or 12, it could be long. And that's because this adventure is really broken down into 3, the Sinister Secrets is broken down into 3 main areas. You have the whole mansion up above with all the craziness going on there. Then you have the cellar and all the smuggler stuff that's going on in the cellar. Like you could break it down to 3 pieces, right? You can almost break it down by the map. So you have one, which is the ground floor and the first floor. That's weird. First and second floor of the mansion itself. And then when they go down into the cellar, you have the cellar itself plus the smuggler cove, right? Great, very great, straight, typical D&D kind of adventure. And that's part 2. And then part 3 is the Sea Ghost. And the Sea Ghost is a different, it is, I think this adventure, more so than many that I've read, this one is the perfect example. It's almost a textbook case in building a situation and letting your players navigate that situation how they will. And this is a different mindset than I think a lot of DMs bring, a lot of experienced DMs bring to D&D, where we break things down into encounters. And an encounter might be, we think of them in these discrete scenes, and that in the discrete scene, it may be role-playing and it may be exploration, but a lot of times we think of an encounter as 5 to 7 monsters fighting the party, right? And then you have a series of those. So you might... A DM who's running the ghost might say, well, I'm going to make sure that the characters start on the deck, and the deck is going to be just one set. And then they might go down and crawl through the ship like it's a dungeon. When instead, the way the adventure plays out and the way, I think the way it's intended to be run, and it's interesting because this is written back in 83, so it's not like this is a new idea, is that there's the ship, and here are all the people on the ship, and this is what the people are doing, and you are the characters, and you've got your little boat, and you get to decide how you're going to deal with the ship. You choose, right? And that is a real good example of the build a situation and watch the characters interact with it, and the DM has to react as the NPCs would react to the situation that's going on the ship. And the adventure has a lot about what if you try to what if you try to sink it? What if you try to what do they call it when you smash open the wall of the ship with a hammer? You try to, axe the ship and sink it. What if you try to sneak on and pretend you're news smugglers? There's all different kinds of ways that they can approach it. And you don't want to presume how the characters are going to approach it. Scuttling, but there's another one. They call it walling or something. Not walling, but there's a name for taking a hammer and busting a hole in a ship. And yeah, scuttling is blowing up the whole ship. So this is a really good example, and it's kind of a sink or swim, sort of situation, because as a DM, if you're running this, it can be really hard, right? And it's not easy, I think, for anybody. I don't know that it's easy for new DMs to run this, and I don't think it's necessarily easy for older DMs who are used, or more experienced DMs who are used to building things in set encounters. And that's a real trick, and we're gonna probably spend a good piece of today talking about it. So let's go through the steps. Why don't we? Let's jump over to the steps. Bring up this, and we go to the starting. I disappeared. There. So these are my notes. I copied over a lot of notes from. This is last week's notes. So let's go to this week's notes. So we start, as we always do, by looking at the characters that we've got. We've got one player who is out. He's going to be out for a while. Sundering. No, there's another name. They talk about it in this. There's a name for it. I've been missing some of the chat, so let me go through. Slightly off topic question for a downtime moment in the stream. Do you ever ask your players to give you some plans for the downtime session to lead your prep? No, I haven't, and that's not a bad idea. I have run downtime sessions afterwards, through email. So if a player has an idea of like, oh, I really wanted my character to go chase this guy around, then we will email back and forth about what happens. I'll even roll on my side and maybe not tell the player what they're rolling for, but I will sort of shape the events by how the roll went. And then they come to the next session and say, by the way, while you guys were all doing that, I was off doing this other thing, and boy, let me tell you what I learned. So that is not uncommon. I think you could do that. I think you could theoretically kind of run D&D all the time by having sort of downtime activities that take place out of the game as well as things that are happening in the game. Like maybe it's like, oh, hey, even though we're in the middle of a dungeon, I have that old book and I'd like to read more about that book. I just like to study it. And then you like go back, oh, wow, you're reading the book and you find this. And by the way, there's crazy maddening words and you roll and you lose maybe you fight back the madness of the book, but you also learn about the Black Death. So yeah, there are good ways to do that. It's something that is an area that I'd like to explore more. This is something that I think the Monty Cook has a pretty advanced RPG called it's the one in the giant black cube, Invisible Sun. And in Invisible Sun there are phases of play, and I think it's 3 kinds of phases of play, but one of those phases of play is sort of either one-on-one discussions with people or doing it through email and things like that. Like it's intended to be played partially offline. And I think that's a neat way to do it. And I think if you can bring these sort of downtime sessions into your games and kind of have time between events, there's a lot of opportunity to kind of play D&D between sessions through email and stuff. It can also be pretty time demanding to do that. So, character. Oh, yeah, let's see. Jason Sunday says, I've been using steps from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master for Starfinder, and it's super helpful. Yeah, so I actually read... Starfinder was one of the books that I read when I was doing research on Return. One of the things I wanted to do with Return is I was focused on D&D, but I wanted to ensure that the stuff I was talking about there wasn't so wrapped around D&D that it couldn't work for other RPGs. So Starfinder was the latest Pathfinder game that had come out. Although I read the Pathfinder books too. I read the Pathfinder Game Mastery Guide and I read the Starfinder Guide. And actually there's an example from Starfinder in Return about reskinning, that they talk about reskinning monsters in Starfinder. And I was like, look, if it's in the published book, it's a technique you ought to use. So yeah, I'm glad that worked for Starfinder. And my experience so far is that the steps from Return seem to be working for a lot of different RPGs. So I'm really glad about that. Evil John says, there's an Invisible Son RPG reprint coming soon. Monty Cook Games. Yeah, so there's a reprint. It's also available in PDF. It is this enormous, giant digital pile. I think it's $100 on DriveThru RPG, but gives you something like 1,000 pages worth of material to play Invisible Sun. I have not picked it up, and most of the reason is that the type of game it is, the sort of weird oddities in our contemporary world is not really a, I like the high fantasy and maybe a little bit of science fiction, but generally I'm a fantasy nerd, and that's there's enough for me to chew on in that I don't really have to dive. I love Numenera. So I'm doubled in on their Numenera stuff, but yeah, I played a lot of contemporary RPGs. I've played what's the Night's Black Agents and stuff like that, and they're fine, but it just, I don't know. I'm never really, the contemporary stuff doesn't grab me as much. So characters, we have Mac. Mac is a Goliath Grave cleric, smuggler from Monmerg, worshipper of Weejas. Worked at the Empty Nest, helped save, and knows Solmar from Andrew Solmar, because Solmar likes to hang out in the bar. We have Bleth, human paladin of Procan, who hunts the Black Whale, the Black Death. She threw herself off the drop as Skylar caught her. Raised by Farron at the Temple of Procan, she is a dock ward for Andrew Solmar, and Andrew's father was killed in the same well that killed Bleth's parents. We have Skylar, an Aarakocra storm cleric who knows Welgar Brinehand, saved Bleth from throwing herself off, brought both Dave and Corville to Welgar when they came ashore. We have Thurvin. I'm skipping Dave because Jay is not at the game. We have Thurvin, a half-sea elf storm sorcerer who served on the same pirate ship as Mac, saved Mac's life when the Lady's Grace, the ship which they served, was sunk. I can't remember if the Black Death was responsible for that or not. Met Farron, the druid, and when burying the captain. And we have Corvel, human fighter, is fisherman who got knocked on the head during a bad fishing expedition, saved by Dave and healed by Welgar, proselytizes the god Zygag, who came to him when he was knocked out in the head. He and Dave both serve Ida Oland, and Ida pays Dave a stipend to take care of Corvel because he needs the help. So those are the characters that we have in this campaign. Yes, there is a new Numenera Kickstarter. I backed the PDF version. This is probably the first time I'm not buying the main books, and it's because I've got a giant stack of Numenera books already, and I don't need to completely outstrip my place, and the PDFs will serve me well. But yeah, I think it's 3 new kind of campaigny areas. It's pretty cool. So the strong start. This is interesting. So the characters have their mission. We want to reiterate the goals. And I might refine them a bit because reading through those goals, I'm not sure that they're as strong as they can be. But is there any other... So, like, what is the Scarlet Brotherhood up to right now? The Scarlet Brotherhood is the secret society that's sitting around Saltmarsh. Are they happy? Like, what do they want? What does the Scarlet Brotherhood? There's at least one in Scarlet. There's probably 2 Scarlet Brotherhood agents in Saltmarsh. What's their feeling about the characters dealing with the sea ghost? Like, do they just want to watch it? Do they want to support it? Or do they want to add something else? Is there some other, like, what? So they want chaos. They want to, they want to disband the council and get their own members on the council, or they want to have influence with the council. I'm trying to think out loud. So I know. I know that Corvel knows that. So Corvel has enough information to get one of the council members, Gellin Primewater, arrested for smuggling. He followed them. This was something that happened in an email. So that could be interesting. But so is there something else that the Scarlet Brotherhood could do to destabilize the area? Could there be a murder would be good, an assassination? Who could be assassinated? I don't think it would be the council members yet. I don't know. I'll think about that. So, potential Scarlet Brotherhood. Ooh, what if, this would be a Scarlet Brotherhood bit of shenanigans. That what if, Manistrad is poisoned? And one of Gellin Primewater's bottles of wine is the culprit. That could be interesting. We'll set that aside. Set up a fake council assassination attempt to place evidence in someone else. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. So this way, and a loyalist is poisoned by, or potentially poisoned by, a traditionalist, and it aims back to Gellin. And the only person who no, let's see, the Scarlet Brotherhood wouldn't know that, wouldn't know that it was one of Gellin's things, so they wouldn't want to be too underhanded. But yeah, I think maybe that yeah, it could just drop a little chaos in. We'll see. So scenes. Pretty straightforward. They're going to reiterate the goals for the Sea Ghost, return to the Haunted Mansion, and call the Sea Ghost, right? And then infiltrate. And the infiltration is going to be the bulk of the session. It might even take 2 sessions. My other game, it took 2 sessions to deal with the Sea Ghost. So let's look at these goals, right? So what does the council want? The council wants to know, they know that weapons are going out. So the main thing is, who are the weapons going to? And where? That's really, the goal. Right, is find out where the weapons are going. Because the whole finding out like how big a threat it is, that's actually the Danger Dunwater adventure. So this one is really just that. Just find out where it's going. And that's cool. It's like a single quest. And the cool bit is I have the map and a piece of paper that talks. It's like I have the physical evidence. I got to remember to bring it. Cthulhu will help me remember to bring the evidence, because I'm going to throw Cthulhu on the floor. And then I'll be like, why is Cthulhu on the floor? And then I'll remember, oh, that's because I got to get the notes, because my wife currently has the notes because she's using the other game. So then the sub goals are find out where the weapons came from and eliminate the pirate threat. Like, that's really their goal. So that's nice and refined. And here's the important thing about a situation. When you're developing a situation, I think, what do I know about anything, right? I think that when you're developing a situation like infiltrate the Sea Ghost, you want to make sure that the situation can be very dynamic and fluid. The goals should not be. The goals should be solid. And that's because the players need something to hang on to say, well, what is our goal about? Let's accomplish that goal. Right? And that way they have something they can plan around. It doesn't matter how you get there, but you got to have a goal. And this is something that I didn't do as well when I ran the Sea Ghost. So my Poor Wednesday group is my experimental group in this, because they're a couple weeks ahead of it's my Sunday group. And the Sea Ghost, it went okay. And they ended up getting the ship and they got rid of the pirates and all that. But it was weird. And they were like, we don't know what we're doing. And this is a very common... I think it's a very common situation. And the common situation is that your players are going to come up with 3 different plans and probably enact them all. And it's because the players aren't necessarily on board with everybody else. So they tend not to follow one goal. They tend to follow multiple things. So like 2 people will try to get on pretending to be smugglers. 2 are going to swim underneath the boat and infiltrate it. 2 of them are going to pretend to be something else. 2 of them are going to go and start kicking ass. And working in that situation where you essentially have this like big split the party situation, can be a little rough. And you want to act like the pirates are going to act, and the pirates are not the smartest people. So you don't have to say like, well, you're screwed. You're going to have all the pirates attacking. Well, the pirates are as confused as the players are, and as the characters are. So it ends up looking like 3-year-old soccer at the end of the day, but that's a lot of fun. It can be a good time. What do we got here in chat going on? A bit late. What did I miss? Native DM says, I don't know, a bunch of stuff. What do you do if the adventure path does not have a strong start or left you off at a dull point in the adventure? That's a good question. So you come up with something. Not to be a smartass about it, but the reason why this, even when we have a published adventure, that we still come up with a strong start is because we don't know necessarily where it ended. And we try to say, like, what, you know, how do we bring them back in? And even if they're in the middle of a dungeon, something can happen. Do an earthquake, something's on fire, somebody's running from someone else, right? You see a goblin comes running in and he's being chased by something even worse, like a demon. So, you know, what we want to ramp up the excitement in that first scene. And we think about, even if you're in the middle of an adventure, and especially if you're in the middle of an adventure, especially if you're in a section of a published path where it's not, it doesn't have a strong start, you add one, right? And that's what I try to do. That's why I look at it every time. Strong start is one of the things that I almost never skip. It's really rare for me to skip a strong start, and that's because I want to have something that brings them in, regardless of where they are in the adventure. So I hope that answers the question. Fake council assassination attempt. Yeah, maybe someone acting out of school, and the Brotherhood needs the light brought on them to get them out of the way. Yeah, I think that Ned Shakeshaft could end up becoming a detriment. I don't know where Ned is right now. I forget what happened to Ned. Did they kill Ned? I think they killed. No, Ned got away. So there's a big question of, like, where's Ned? So Ned Shakeshaft. Is lurking around Saltmarsh. Secrets. I'm coming up with a bunch of secrets. Secrets are another one that I think... I need a name for a wine. The Amber Rose. What other? So there. Oh, so we got the secrets on the. Let's see. Who? Quartermaster is dead. What other? So the weapons came from King Scotty's armies. And a particular quartermaster named what? Random names. Dominic Thornhunter. It's a great name. Thornhunter is dead. Promontory? I don't think I spelled that right. More secrets. They're not raiders. They keep to themselves. What else? Are there any other secrets they could find on the ship? I'd like to throw some other secrets from the other adventures in here. So let's look at salvage operation and Isle of the Abbey. Someone of Saltmarsh ships the Emperor of the Waves. And then Isle of the Abbey. So there's a bunch of secrets. Sorry, I'm dead quiet when I'm writing my secrets because I'm thinking real hard. It's real entertaining, I bet. Watch me think about secrets. But I think these are the good ones. So, I always try to drop in a couple. You want to sort of drop in hints of future adventures so that the whole thing feels a little bit more dynamic than this serial of events. So the idea of dropping in the idea that Anders Solmar, part of his that there was a ship called the Emperor of the Waves that's out there, and there might be ways to sort of tie that into the characters. Perhaps that was one of the ships that got lost in his fleet in a big storm. There's probably interesting ways to tie that in, and then the idea of that the council wants to take Abbey Isle, that they're looking at taking this and expanding it outward, and it will help secure. Helping to secure it for the for Saltmarsh. So, what is, let's see. So there's that goes to Saltmarsh section. There's adventures in Saltmarsh. Let's take a look at this. This talks about how to tie these in. So salvage operation, and for the waves of the lost ship belonging to Scarlet Brotherhood, Salmar receives information about hires the contract to recover the treasure aboard the ship. Led to believe the ship was once owned by his family, but they find out that it was actually a Sea Prince slave vessel. Yeah, so this is a good... yeah, are there actually ghosts in Saltmarsh? There are. I think there's ghosts. In Saltmarsh? No, there's a vampire underneath the town. It's kind of like a ghost. An isle in the Abbey. Hostility to the Sea Prince running high. Expedition to clear the Abbey Isle and establish a base there. Yeah. Yeah, so those are good. Those are good secrets. So we got enough secrets. I think we got a lot going on. I feel pretty good about it. Fantastic Locations is really just the Sea Ghost. Look, I already wrote it down there. So I'm set there. And then we have NPCs. I have a whole ton. So we have Kaladek as the mage in the tower. Zendros, the quartermaster of values. Plays Mr. Morden in Babylon 5. I love that. Ned Shakeshaft, Scarlet Brotherhood agent. Andrew Solmar, Belgar Brian-Handed. Yeah, tons of NPCs that have come in here. I can bring out the gold blades. Are really they're I'll keep them in for one more because we might find out about the murder. So, and that's actually a secret. That's probably a pretty important secret. So we'll stick that one up top. That what do they call it? Gold blades. So that's what happened in the murder. Turkey Slaw says, just so you know, for future, if the should only appear with a vessel's name if it's part of the name. Iron Lady or the Iron Lady, not the Iron Lady. So taken to Sea Ghost? Is that what you're saying? It's not the Sea Ghost, it's just Sea Ghost? Let's see. So I'll keep them. Yeah. I have so many NPCs, right? So many guys. And then monsters are the really just the people on the crew, and we'll see how that goes in the grub swarms. Yeah, so that feels pretty strong. So one of the cool things I've got is I've got a Sea Ghost map. So this is the map that came with the silver edition of from Beetle and Grimm. It's a really cool, and I'm hoping they'll end up keeping the ship because I'd like to keep using this map. The article seems to fade when the ship becomes love. Serenity versus the Serenity. So are you saying I should just call it Sea Ghost instead of the Sea Ghost? They call it the Sea Ghost right here. Let's see what they say in the book. All right, I think it's called the Sea Ghost. I think that's the name of the ship. I'm going to go with their style guide. Crew of the Sea Ghost. So it's kind of the Ghost of Saltmarsh. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. This group, I don't think they're not going to end up like a bunch of Navy SEALs. It's probably going to be a little bit goofy, whatever approach they take. They have one Aarakocra who can kind of fly and get the view up from up top. They've got a couple of people that can swim, but then the other people will have to be on the boat. What's going on, kitty? Kitty's using her scratching post. We like that. Better than scratching up our furniture. Renaming a seafaring vessel is considered bad luck. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Oh, there are the kitties. Hello, kitties. Hello. This is Carson. And this is Maliki. Maliki was up there sleeping a little while ago. Nope, there they go. What else is going on? So Eberron, this past week, the new Eberron book got announced. What is the new Eberron book? Let's do in the last month. Eberron Rising from the Last War is the name of the book. Hello. I love this cover. It doesn't look like it's very high res, but I think that it looks awesome, and I ordered the special edition cover because it looks awesome. There was a bunch of drama about this cover, and whether it's the actual. No, thanks. Whether that's the actual cover to the book or a placeholder cover. And I think so Jeremy Crawford said it's a placeholder, and then a bunch of people said, oh, I think he's lying. So nobody knows what's up with the cover. I have a feeling it's a placeholder cover. I'm not crazy about this cover, but who am I? But it's a pretty big deel. First of all, it's the first new class for 5th edition since 5th edition came out. So 5 years, almost 6 years. Almost 6 years since 5th edition came out, and it'll be the first actual new class. Ton of new races. I think it's got a list of everything that's in here. A ton of new races, 16 race and sub-race options. That's crazy. That's a crazy amount of new races. But I don't know if it has an adventure in it, but it's got like an adventure building system, and it's got something that people have been talking about, which they dig a lot, and I think is a really great idea, which is the idea of a group background, like a single group NPC, which I think is a really great way to sort of bring characters together. I bet it's something I've done before, and I think it's a highly stealable idea that we can throw into our games that will make bringing the characters together a lot easier. So like you're all working for House Cannith, as an example. Comes out in November, and I know for my Wednesday game, we're probably I'm gonna heavily pitch this one as something to do. I don't know what we will include a campaign. As that include a campaign? Is it telling me to include a campaign, or are they including a campaign? What are you doing back there? Crazy cats. I will assume it includes a campaign. Includes a campaign for characters venturing into the Mournland. So I've not run anything in the Mournland before. I've run a couple of Eberron campaigns. I ran one that was a seafaring campaign, and I ran another one that was a Zendrek. It was set in Zendrek, and I think maybe I ran a third. I think I've run 3 Eberron campaigns, and the third was so I think one I did in the city. There's a short campaign that I did in the city, although maybe that was the seafaring one. I can't remember. That might have been one. I think I did one that started off in Sharn, and then there were lightning rails, and there's all kinds of stuff there, and then they went to Zendrek, and there was a exploration of the jungles of Zendrek. And then I did another one where I took Isle of Dread and some seafaring stuff, and we did a sort of Eberron pirate thing, which is a weird one, but it went fine. Like, people really enjoyed it. So I'm interested to I'll probably end up using wherever the attention has gone in this book. That's the kind of adventure I want to run, because I want to squeeze as much as I can out of the book. So I will probably, no, I don't want to find out more. Stop it. I just said no, and then it brought me there. So it'll be interesting to see where the focus of the book is. Like, I don't presume it'll be on Zendrak. Zendrak is the big jungle to the south, a big separate continent. But that's very Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then Eberron can be very Raiders of the Lost Ark. But we just did Tomb of Annihilation, and it's funny because we've done city and sea and jungle already. So I think I'd like to do probably either that sort of high fantasy city heist, or I think the idea of sort of post World War II film noir style might be kind of cool. You know, like Cold War. I know a really good movie to kind of base this on that I think is right up the Eberron alley as far as atmosphere, because I think this is what Keith Baker was real interested in. There's a Hitchcock movie called Notorious. It's one of my favorite movies, and I got a cough. Notorious is about Nazi spies after, I think it's set after World War II, and it's set in Buenos Aires, and Nazi spies are trying to sort of keep things going. There's Nazi spies are plotting after the fall of World War II. There's still these Nazis that are either hiding or still plotting together. And the precursor to the CIA is that Cary Grant? I think it might be Cary Grant. Wow, it was made in 1946. And Cary Grant, right? So Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman are the two main actors, and it's all about Ingrid Bergman's character is a former girlfriend of a potential Nazi, and they've since broken up. But Cary Grant's character, who's like the precursor to the Nazis, says, "Hey, we want you to get back together with him because we have a feeling there's a plot going on." And the whole thing is this super suspenseful. She's in love with Cary Grant. Cary Grant is saying, "I know you're in love with me, but we need you to go back with this guy, Claude Rains, Alexander Sebastian, because we're pretty sure he's dealing with former Nazis and we're trying to hunt out these former Nazis." So it's this very, and what's cool about it is it's a super suspenseful, super like you're on the edge of your seat. And it's all about like spies and Nazis and stuff. And there's not a gun in the whole movie. You never see anybody die on screen, and you never see any act of violence. You do see acts of violence, but the violence is not like stab in the back, punch in the face violence. It's this long-term psychological violence that's occurring, and it's super dark, and it's a great movie. I highly recommend it if and I have a feeling that would be a wonderful storyline for Eberron. That, not specifically, but the idea of like former members of, former members of the last war are in hiding, and the characters need to help like uncover the secret returning plot from this. And they might, they all kind of have history in the last war. I think it'd be really cool. And you have the Lord of Blades. The movie is called Notorious by Alfred Hitchcock in 1946, and I think it's my favorite Alfred Hitchcock movie. It's a really, really great movie. I really love it. So I think that would be a fun, Eberron takes its inspiration from film noir and action adventure, and I think that so like the Maltese Falcon is often used as an example of the kind of I don't think it's on Netflix. I don't know where you can get it. Because Hitchcock movies I don't think they're all released. So, I think that would be a fun one. So I think that's probably, I'm going to run that. And then the question is for my Sunday group, I'd still like to try Avernus. Hey, an ancient volcanic crater near Cuma is Avernus. What's it called? Descent into Avernus. I'd like to run this. So when does this come out? This should be up pretty soon, right? September 17th. Oh, and look at that special edition. Wow, everything's special edition. Is that Ball? Yeah, I wonder what Ball has to do with this. So, Snark Knight says, Third Man is on Netflix. That's Eberron AF. Yeah, that's pretty funny. I'd like to play Ghosts of Avernus too. So we will see. But I'll have to talk to my... because I think Ghosts of Saltmarsh is going to probably take me into November. So we'll have both books available, and my groups can decide what we want to do. We'll have multiple options at that point. We have a lot of options, because I also haven't even touched Icespire. I would really like to play Icespire, Dragon of Icespire Keep. That's the new D&D Essentials Kit adventure, and that's a up to level 6 adventure. It'd be fun to play that one. So we will see. So it is 11 o'clock. It is time for me to get ready for my game, or beyond what I've done so far. I got to get all my stuff together. I want to thank. Isn't it Ice Spire? Let's find out. I thought it was Ice Spire because it's the name of the mountain. Sources, adventures, Dragon of Ice Spire. There's the cover of it. So I got to get ready for my game. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. I will let you know how the infiltration of the Sea Ghost turns out, and we will see where things go from here. So have a great week. Go out and play some D&D. Have a good time, and thank you all very much for coming. Have a great week.